Hey everyone, I want to welcome you to our Sueur City Council meeting dated March 25, 2024. At this time, we'll call the meeting to order and we'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Council members, you were all given your packets over the weekend. You've had a chance to look them over, reach out to our city administrator with any questions. At this time, I'm looking for a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Huntington, seconded by Councilmember Toon. Any discussion, comments, or concerns? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. Moving on to the consent agenda, all items on the consent agenda are considered routine and have been made available for the city council at least 2 days in advance of the meeting. These items will be enacted in one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member or citizen so requests, in which event the item will be removed from the agenda and considered in normal sequence. With that said, Mr. Wilby, we first have to get an approval for the consent agenda, do we not? I'm lost.
I would like to walk through it.
Yes,
That's all right.
yes,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just 4 items tonight. First is approval of the minutes from the regular city council meeting held March 11th, 2024. The second item is disbursements through today, March 25th, 2024. Third is a personnel action, which is hiring of a full-time police officer. And fourth, personnel action is hiring of a part-time community service officer or CSO. Council may note that this is the same individual who at the last meeting we hired as a full-time officer. This individual will be finishing up schooling, and while they're finishing up schooling, will work as a part-time CSO in our department, which will aid in the transition to full-time status as a sworn officer.
Thank you, Mr. Roby. Thank you for pulling me back on track there. Anybody have any questions for our city administrator regarding the consent agenda?
Yes, just, will you get back to me on that?
Certainly will. Yes.
Then I have, thank you.
With that, I will ask for a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda.
So moved.
Thank you, Councilmember Sullivan. Councilmember Williams seconded. Any other discussion, comments, or concerns? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. Moving on to public comment, Mr. T, I believe there's no names on the list. Thank you. That takes us into the city administrator update. Mr. Roby.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. A few items to update you all on tonight. Union negotiations continue to progress. We are having another meeting tomorrow. Last week I attended a meeting with the Army Corps of Engineers and Sibley County Water Conservation Office regarding the city's wastewater treatment ponds, the old lagoons across 169, which happen to be in Sibley County, about future plans for those, and the wetland bank that the city's been working on for some time now. I attended the MnDOT Highway 93 and County Road 6 open house last week, which was very, very warm, but very well attended. And they just gave a status update on the 93 project and the County Road 6 project and how that's going to impact transportation. Last week, our zoning administrator and building official, Justin Nielsen, and I sent in FEMA. So FEMA has updated their 100 and 500 year flood maps, and so they issued us new maps. No major or significant impact to the city, but we did sit through a portion of the presentation just to get their update. And then that Sibley County FEMA maps haven't been updated since I think 1999 or 1989, so that was interesting. Last Friday morning, we had a North 4th Street Utility Project departmental kickoff. So we had all of our department managers sit down and look at the corridor for the North 4th Street project to meet with the engineering team to get a list of questions and concerns from them to talk about all the various potential impacts for that project. This week on Wednesday, there will be a meeting to discuss some potential HRA funding. There's some state money coming in to LeSueur County, and we've been in contact with LeSueur County about the use of those HRA dollars, those housing dollars, and potential applicability here at Hillside Court. At the last meeting, I believe I shared that the city of Sueur has been awarded $960,000 from the federal government in congressionally directed spending, which is very exciting. Public Services Director Transberg and I received an email late last week from Senator Tina Smith's office that in addition to the $960,000, we're being awarded $200,000, a little over $200,000 to be used toward wastewater, toward machinery and lighting improvements at the wastewater treatment plant. We don't have any other details on that program for now, but the office did email us late Friday afternoon and tell us that these are funds that we didn't necessarily request, but they are always on the lookout. It's one of the benefits of staying in close contact with our federal representatives. We let them know what we're working on, what potential projects we might have coming down the pipeline, and they keep their eyes open for us. A reminder to everyone in the community that Saturday, April 6th, the Chamber of Commerce will be holding their Business and Retail Expo up at the middle school, high school. And the city's very own AmeriCorps intern, Peter Turek, will be giving a presentation on Emerald Ash Borer. So if you happen to be heading up there, Mr. Turek, the younger, will be giving a presentation on EAB and what the city is doing in response to the infestation. And finally, I just learned, and I didn't even share it with the rest of staff, except for Stacy. Don't worry, it's not that exciting. I mean, it is, but it's not terrible. It's Ryan and Lindsay look at me in a panic. Public Services Director Transberg was awarded the Minnesota Wastewater Operators Association Class A Operator of the Year for the Southeast region of Minnesota. He'll now be in the running. I think we'll find out in July. He's one of 5 finalists for the statewide Wastewater Operator of the Year. Foster maintains his A license, and so we're very proud of him and excited to see him at the state conference this year. That's all I have for today.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Wilson? By the way, congratulations to Director Transberg on that award, and thank you to the staff for reaching out to our federal government for those funds for wastewater and water treatment. So that'll really help a lot. Thank you. Moving on to the regular agenda. The first item on the regular agenda tonight is the Resolution R 2024-021 authorizing funds transfer. I know we're going to be shifting some major funds there. Mr. Roby, you want to cover that with us?
I appreciate the tongue in cheek, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. As council knows, from time to time, it will consider fund transfers of dedicated or budgeted funds. And in this case, we've had several funds that maintain dollars in investment accounts with 4M, which is Minnesota Municipal Money Market account, thank you, for some years now. And over time, these funds have been transferred back into our main account, or pooled cash account here at First Farmers. Director Graff, who's here tonight, has been clearing up some of those accounts just to make sure they're easier to track and the funds belong where they belong. And we had a little bit of interest earnings that were remaining in a couple of these funds, and in order to appropriately transfer them, he would like to consolidate them all into a 604, which is the electric fund, which carries a primary balance in our 4M account. And the balances here, should City Council approve of this transfer, would move 7 cents from Fund 101 in the 4M account to Fund 604, and 28 cents from Fund 321 to Fund 604.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions for Mr. Roby?
Don't spend it all, please.
There's always money there, Michael, when we look for it. I'm looking for a motion then at this time. Thank you. I won't even read it. It's up there. Then we already had a motion. Mr. Tui, seconded.
Second.
By Mr. Huntington. Any other discussion, comments, concerns? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. Moving on to item number 7B, the 2024 Community Center CIP amendment. Mr. Roby.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's not all that common that we would actually come forward to City Council with an amendment to our capital plan, but it does occur from time to time. And I've been meeting with a recreation manager, Allison Watkins, about her CIP, and of course, a number of the items on her CIP plan are either in the works already or are slated for later this summer. An example is the gymnasium floor, which will be refinished sometime this summer. One of the items on the list, the Zamboni threshold heater, was approved for 2024. And in evaluating her stock of tables and chairs that she uses for various events throughout the year, in which she does rent out and are a source of revenue for the recreation program, has slowly fallen into disrepair, and she would very much like to replace those. And she would like to repurpose that $5,000 as she sees that as a greater or more urgent need to the operations of the recreation program. I fully support that, and so our request tonight is that City Council would approve an amendment to the approved 2024 CIP list to reallocate $5,000 from the Zamboni threshold heater to the purchase of rentable tables and chairs at the community center.
It's not a hockey course. Can you tell me what the threshold is?
Yes, so when you open if you think of the north end of the arena, you open the doors, the dasher boards, and the Zamboni can come in and out. When that Zamboni leaves the ice, there's a grate underneath there to catch any water so they can sweep water in. If you don't heat that appropriately, and a lot of arenas don't, what will happen is it can build up ice just beyond the arena itself, the sheet of ice itself. So when the Zamboni goes off or on, it can hit the bottom of the Zamboni, cause damage to the Zamboni, it can create a slip and trip hazard. And the best way to do that is to install an actual heater there so it'll keep ice buildup from forming on the north end of the rink.
That heater is okay for the rest of the year.
So we don't currently have a heater there right now. Allison would still like to add that to the CIP for a future year, but it's just seen as less of a pressing need. Staff are continuing to manage it, and they feel like they can manage it physically breaking up the ice going forward.
Very good. Anybody else? Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion to approve the proposed change to the 2024 Community Center CIP. Thank you, Councilmember Tui. Councilmember Williams, I believe, was second. Any other discussion, comments, concerns? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. Moving on to item 7C, Department of Energy group grant letter of commitment. I'm sorry, Mr. Roby, you want to explain this?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would. This is actually a program that the city applied for last year in 2023. So the Federal Department of Energy provides a number of grant programs, one of which is the Grid Resilience and Innovation Partnerships Program, because everything has to have an acronym, but also specifically for the electric grid and providing funding for reinforcing the stability and the security of the electric grid. And one thing that the city of Sueur has done proactively over the last 4 to 5 years is bury as much of our overhead electric infrastructure underground as possible. So whether that's new developments, whether that's in conjunction with street projects, for example, during the Casat 36 project, we had 2 projects running concurrently. One was the actual reconstruction of South Main Street, and the other one, our electric department was busy burying all those overhead lines underground while the ground was already disturbed. We did the same thing on the Casat 22 project. While they were tearing up all the infrastructure and putting new water and sewer lines in, we buried conduit along there to bury the electrical infrastructure as well. As part of the North 4th Street project, which, as you know, is undergoing engineering review right now, the electric utility has already started making plans for burying that electric along North 4th Street, which involves, if you look at the map in your packet, which is a little bit confusing, it's actually some of the poles that exist between 3rd and 4th Street and some poles that exist between 4th and a theoretical 5th Street, kind of in front of St. Anne's School on the east side. And we'd like to take the opportunity to bury that line as well. It's a project that is planned for already. What the GRIP program itself provides is eligibility for these types of projects to be paid for by the Department of Energy up to 75% of the project, or $2 million over 5 years is what they would do. So they would, if we were awarded, we would apply the funds for any of the planned underground projects, which again, we would do anyway. What it will do is it will just keep all of these expenses, these projects, from hitting electric rates. and allowing the feds to pay for some of our resiliency work. So as part of this grant application, the electric department has presented a letter of commitment asking for city council's approval of that to be submitted along with the grant application. And I would like to add one quick thank you, which is to the Rotary Club. We, as part of this grant application, it does help if you have what's called a good neighbor agreement. And it's essentially a community organization that that serves as somewhat of an information conduit. So if we're awarded this grant, the agreement with the Rotary is that the city will go to the Rotary, share updates on the project, get feedback on the project, whether that's impacts, disruptions, detouring for vehicles, things like that. We will keep them informed of the work that we're doing. We agree to allow them to ask us questions about the projects that we're doing, and so Rotary graciously agreed to sign that good neighbor agreement and essentially be our accountability partner through the grant process. So tonight the motion or the request is that City Council approve the submission of letter of commitment from the city to participate in this grant program and seek funding.
Thank you, Mr. Roby. That is the motion ahead of us. Any questions? Go ahead, Mr.
Real
Roby.
quick, probably just semantics, but in the request for council action, it says 25% cost share over a 5-year period. Pretty cut and dry, but there's no mention of that in the letter. It just says we'll cover the 25%. Now, is that implied within the grant structure?
That 75% would be covered,
No,
and
no,
25% would be.
It just says 25%. So if we're awarded the grant for $2 million, it could be, if you read this, we got to give them $500,000. As opposed to over 5 years that's in the body of this here.
So the way the grant works is we would, if we were awarded, operationally, we would submit these projects to them under the terms of the grant agreement. They would then reimburse us for up to 75% of the expenses of the project. So we would go out and do the work, submit the invoices, they would send back 75% of the total cost of the project to reimburse us.
Then does it, then the 5-year period, say you gotta burn through this in 5 years? Is that what that means?
Up to $2 million over 5 years. So if we didn't use it, we don't use it. But anything that we submit in that 5-year period, up to $2 million would be reimbursable at 75%.
Fair enough.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Tui. Any other questions? Otherwise, I'll look for a motion to approve the letter of commitment from the city for federal underground electrical infrastructure GRIP grant program.
So moved.
Wow. Mr. Huntington first, seconded by Councilmember Sullivan. Any other discussion, comments, concerns? If not, all those in favor? Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. This takes us on to item 7D, this resolution R 2024-023, 2024 street maintenance wide concrete, citywide concrete. Mr. Roby.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The next several items, as you likely noted in your packet, all relate to 2024 street maintenance. Nothing extraordinary to point out here, but I will walk through each one individually and ask for approval of each respective resolution. All of the 2024 street maintenance project items on tonight's agenda fall within the budget of the approved 2024 street maintenance project, as described, I think, by Mr. Transberg late last year and early this year. The plan this year is a little bit different, where because we're able to do some of this work ourselves, instead of doing one single contract for all of the street maintenance work that we have, the engineer and public works manager found that they could likely do it for less money and get more work done by parsing out each individual contract. So in one single contract, you come in and do all this work. So they figured out how to time it out so that they can do each of these concrete, mud jacking, mastic and seal coating individually. And then we time our own street repair that we will do ourselves in and around those projects. So the first of these is citywide concrete. We issued bids for the removal or replacement of concrete curbs, gutters, and alley entrances along the project areas, which are outlined in the packet. The schedule for this would be slated to start the third week of April and be complete by the third week of June. We did receive 2 bids. Nielsen Concrete is the apparent lowest bidder, $52,894.20. And Resolution R 2024-023 would accept those bids and award contract for the concrete work to Nielsen Concrete.
Thank you, Mr. Roby. Anybody have any questions for Mr. Roby? Any comments? Otherwise, I will entertain a motion for resolution R 2024-023.
So moved.
Thank you, Councilmember Tui.
Second.
Councilmember Sullivan, thank you. Any other discussion, comments, concerns? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. Moving on to item 7E, resolution R 2024-024. Mr. Roby, you want to explain this to us?
I would, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is for the crack sealing portion of the 2024 street maintenance. For crack sealing, the work would include furnishing and installing of asphalt and mastic sealant to fill cracks in the asphalt along the project corridor. The schedule for this would be slated to be begin the first week of June and end the third week of July. We received 9 bids for this portion of the work. Lot Pros is the apparent low bidder, $6,017, and Resolution R 2024-024 would accept these 9 bids and award contracts for the crack sealing work to Lot Pros.
Thank you. Any questions for city administrator? Anybody?
Have we done business with these guys before?
Not as a city, no, but we have other individuals who have worked with Lot Pros outside of the city of Sueur.
Yeah,
So
I
their
mean,
bids
you look at
considered
it,
acceptable.
it's like just over half of what the city estimated.
Yes.
Anybody else? Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion for adoption of resolution R 2024-024, which would be accepting the award contract for the 2024 maintenance for crack sealing to the Lot Pros.
So,
Seconded by, who's the first one? Was it Councilmember Schleter, I think. Seconded by Councilmember Williams. Any other discussion, comments, concerns? If not, all those in favor? Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. Moving on to resolution R 2024-025, the 2024 street maintenance full block paving. Mr. Roby.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Resolution R 2024-025 would accept bids and award contracts for the full block paving portion of the 2024 street maintenance. As Director Transberg has shared previously, the equipment that the city acquired this year, or is acquiring, allows us to do significant portions of bituminous asphalt repair, but simply is not large enough to do full block curb to curb or full width replacement of the pavement. Bids were issued. Work includes furnishing and installing full block bituminous pavement with work scheduled to begin late June and end in late July. 3 bids were received, and WW Blacktopping is the apparent low bidder at a little over $37,000. We have worked with WW Blacktopping several times in the past.
Thank you, Mr. Roby. Anybody have any questions regarding the paving?
is this work, what's the word I'm looking for? The homeowner along the street pays for it?
No.
This is out of our street maintenance budget. Am I correct?
Correct, yes.
Okay.
Yep, not an assessment.
Thank you.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
No, not assessed.
Got it.
Any other questions, comments, concerns? If not, I'm looking for a motion to adopt resolution R 2024-025 for accepting and awarding the contract for the 24 street maintenance full block paving to WW Blacktopping.
So moved.
Thank you, Councilmember Sullivan, second by Councilmember Tui. Any other questions, comments, concerns? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. Moving on to resolution R 2024-026, the 2024 street maintenance mud jacking. Mr. Ruby.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is the portion of 2024 street maintenance that involves going underneath existing sunken portions of curb and gutter and raising them up. It's mud jacking. So this is a portion that's not directly involving new placement of new concrete, but this is areas that have been identified along the project corridor where stormwater specifically can't flow appropriately because the panels might be in perfect condition, but they've sunken on one end or the other, or both ends, causing ponding or pooling. Schedule for this work is slated to begin late April, weather permitting, ending in late June. One bid was received from Mankato Mud Jacking. It is recommended for acceptance because it's considered a reasonable and responsible bid for $11,486.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions for Mr. Ruby? If not, I will entertain a motion to accept resolution R 2024-026 for the mud jacking, Mankato Mud Jacking.
So moved.
Thank you, Councilmember Huntington.
Second.
Seconded, Councilmember Tui. Any other discussion, comments, concerns? If not, all those in favor? Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. And now moving on to resolution R 2024-022, the police joint powers agreement. Mr. Ruby.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Those who were on council in April 2022 likely recognize some of the language here. The City of Sueur Police Department, along with all local jurisdictional law enforcement departments, work with the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, the BCA. The BCA maintains a system of data housed within the Criminal Justice Data Network, the CJDN. In order to work with the BCA and gain access to that data that's contained in that network, we have to, as a jurisdiction, have a joint powers agreement that outlines the rules and regulations that govern how we will access that data, when we will access the data, who we will allow to have access to that data from our jurisdiction, et cetera. With the city's recent action to move to a new prosecuting attorney, we also have to name them, Moran et al., in the amendment and agreement to this this joint powers agreement. So the terms and conditions of the agreement itself have not changed. What has changed is simply the addition of our new prosecuting attorney so that they can access this network and work with the BCA on our behalf. This agreement has been in place previously with Anderson and Skubitz, but the BCA was notified that we changed attorneys and we have to let them know, and we have to let our attorney get access to the system on our behalf.
Anybody, questions regarding this matter? If not, I will entertain a motion for resolution R 2024-022 regarding the approval of the updated state of Minnesota joint powers agreement and criminal justice data network subscribed amendment. Anybody?
Someone.
Thank you, Councilmember Sullivan, seconded Councilmember Williams. Any other discussion, comments, concerns? If not, all those in agreement? Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. Moving on to resolution R 2024-029 and R 24-030, DNR grant resolution amendment. Mr. Ruby.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a housekeeping item. The February 12th meeting, City Council approved the resolution that allowed city staff or authorized city staff to apply for 2 DNR grants. We submitted those grants for preliminary feedback from the DNR. The DNR came back with some feedback regarding the grants themselves, which staff are responding to. One of the items that they provided clarity on is that they have very specific format for their resolutions. And while the language remains essentially the same, the format of the resolution that City Council passed does not meet the DNR standards. Their resolutions do not contain any whereas clauses. And so they said in order for the resolutions to be valid, they needed to follow the strict formatting guidelines of the DNR. As such, I submit to City Council tonight 2 resolutions, one for Mayo, one for Legion Park. The language in each is exactly the same. The only thing that differs is the resolution numbers. This will allow us to submit 1 resolution for Mayo Park, 1 resolution for Legion Park. Again, the spirit of the language in the resolutions themselves is not changed from the February 12th City Council actions.
Thank you. And as always, we appreciate any help through the DNR with this grant. So, and that is exactly what we've done. Any discussion, comments from anybody? Questions for Mr. Roby? Otherwise, we'll go with the very first motion to adopt resolution R 2024-029, authorizing city staff for a DNR outdoor recreation grant for Mayo Park.
So moved.
Thank you, Councilmember Sullivan.
Second.
Councilmember Schleter seconded. Anybody have any comments, questions, concerns? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. We have one opposed. Mr. Tui, would you note that, please? Secondly, moving on to resolution R 2024-030, authorizing the city and staff to apply for the DNR outdoor recreation grant for Legion Park.
So moved.
Thank you, Councilmember Sullivan. Councilmember Schleter seconded. Any discussion, comments, concerns? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? We have one opposed, and that would be Councilmember Tui. Thank you. Moving on to the first reading of ordinance 605. Mr. Roby.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. We have zoning administrator, building official Justin Nielsen with us tonight, and he can certainly feel free to fill in any parts that I miss here or provide any additional clarity, as he is the staff liaison to the city's planning commission and has worked very closely with the planning commission and our city planner on the ordinance that's before the council tonight. Ordinance 605 specifically deals with considered changes to the light industrial and general industrial zoning districts within the city. Shorthand I1 and I2. The changes would do a few things. One would accommodate specifically indoor agriculture and data centers, both of which would be defined in the city code according to this ordinance. And with specified guidelines. The ordinance would also add some language addressing the accessory sale of products produced on site in both districts. In the proposed ordinance, in I2, a conditional use permit would allow for the retail sale of products produced on site. In I1, there would be a permitted use up to 2,000 square feet or 30% of the space of the principal structure on the site, and a conditional use at more than 2,000 square feet. Should the first reading be conducted or waived, the second and final reading would be brought to City Council's April 8th, 2024 regular meeting. And just for a little bit of additional context here, some of the conversation around these zoning changes started with the planned acquisition by a business of 1001 North 4th Street to be used potentially as a cannabis production facility or growing facility. The goal then for staff was to look at the existing, at least initially I2, which is where that building sits in general industrial, but also expanding that to I1 to look at what the language in those codes currently does allow and what it doesn't allow. And it was an opportunity for the planning commission to look comprehensively at both of those zoning districts to see what they would like to allow. It's not a secret that we already have an indoor agriculture business in an I2 district on North 4th Street. This would just declare it as such, that's an allowed use in I2. The retail, there was a lot of discussion on the retail side, allowing retail in I1 and I2. Planning Commission discussed that. Staff brought forward a recommendation of the Planning Commission of a maximum of 30% of the principal structure square footage being dedicated to sale of products produced on site. The Planning Commission took that recommendation and modified it slightly to add a square footage cap in the I1 district in particular, and that's reflected in the recommendation that has come to City Council tonight. Justin, did I miss anything?
Got it. Thank you, Mr. Roby. Council members, you were all presented with this verbiage in your packet. It's all highlighted with some of the changes. And if you've all had an opportunity to read it, if you don't have a problem,
After much discussion, the planning commission completed these recommendations to the city council for changes to the light industrial and general industrial districts. I do have one question for the zoning administrator and city administrator on the absolute restriction of 2,000 square feet in addition to the 30% restriction on the size of the sales area. Is the 2,000 square foot number a defendable number, or should we just leave the 30% of area as guidelines?
I guess I'm gonna ask you, Mr. Schleter, what's your recommendation? Do you wanna not do the first reading tonight? Do you wanna send this back to the commission? Amend this?
I would move that the council send this back to the planning commission for a clarification and modification.
Okay. Do we have
Was that a motion?
That's a motion.
I'll second.
a motion's been made by, city, official, Mr. Schleter, to send this back to the commission. And that's been seconded by Council Member Sullivan. Any other discussion, comments? Mr. Roby, you want to say something?
I'll let Mr. Teal speak.
I'm just curious, and I can't find it. Okay. What they can sell. Okay, yeah, here. Proposes the accessory sales of products produced on site. So in other words, this is a hypothetical. The cannabis. So if you walked in there, all you'd see is jars of cannabis. You couldn't have the pipes and the bongs and everything else. Is that correct?
Correct. The spirit of that would be that, yes, the retail, the operation they would be allowed to have would be specifically related to what they produce on site.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we've had a motion by Councilmember Schleter to send this back to the planning and zoning. It's been seconded by Councilmember Sullivan. Any other discussion, comments, concerns?
Joe, is there enough clarification to send it back to them on what?
Yeah, exactly. What do we want to?
So I was gonna make a response, if it's okay, to Mr. Schleter's question. And then, if Justin, if you wouldn't mind stepping up. So Mr. Schleter's, I'm just gonna, put Justin on the stand.
Yeah.
So, because we talked about this a lot as staff, and I guess my initial response would be that the purpose behind staff recommendation at 30% instead of a very specific amount is that we felt that 30% fairly well allows the planning commission and the city council control over the size. And 2,000 square feet, I mean, full disclosure, the planning commission started at 1,500 square feet and then eventually moved that to 2,000 square feet. And 2,000 square feet of retail space is not a whole lot of retail space. And in the event that in an I-1 district, we had a business come in that had 2,200 square feet of retail space to sell their product, would we want them to go through a conditional use permit process? Or do we think that 30% of the square footage pretty well covers us from a site size standpoint? I'll let Justin add anything else he wants to.
Yeah, really, we wanted to have a component in there, especially in the I-2 district where we could take a closer look at it, from the planning commission's point of view. But we didn't want to hinder or put more roadblocks in the way of maybe some smaller businesses in the I-1, which is why we originally proposed adding that component as a conditional use permit in the I-2, but just leaving it as an allowable use in the I-1 with that 30% max. And we didn't want to be too restrictive with square footage, basing it and scaling it down to that small footprint. We just thought the idea is they have a principal use here. They're manufacturing something and maybe they sell it online, but they'd like to have a retail spot to do it on their premises. And so this was what we came up with as staff to make it less hoops to jump through for these smaller businesses, but then also to protect maybe some of these neighborhoods that are closer to residential areas where we don't have 50% production and 50% retail or something to that volume. We wanted to make sure that the primary use stayed manufacturing and production, but also allow the flexibility in I-1 for somebody to come in, not be hindered with the added expense of a conditional use permit to be able to produce and sell on site.
Thank you, Mr. Nielsen.
I have a question. Where would a brewery fit into?
So we have specific language that relates to breweries, tap rooms, things of that nature. So those wouldn't fall under this. That's a separate item.
Anybody else? Mr. Nielsen, Mr. Roby?
So I think my second part, in response to Mr. Sullivan's question, is what's the clarification to provide to the planning commission?
If they want to keep the 2,000 square feet in there, if they want to change that, or if they want to remove it completely.
Is it,
Wouldn't they have done that during the meeting? I mean,
This
you think-
discussion happened towards the end of the meeting, towards the end of the discussion on it. This was added on. It is an arbitrary number that I just want to make sure that this is really what they want to recommend to us.
so not a formal recommendation to planning commission, they come back with a recommendation that without the 2,000 square foot or any square foot, it's just a recommendation to planning commission to revisit the square footage restriction specifically.
Revisit it or modify it.
Fair enough. So this will then, with this motion, take things back to the planning and zoning to re-examine that verbiage. Again, I want to reiterate, it was a motion made by City Councilmember Schleter to send this back to the commission. It was seconded by Mr. Sullivan. Any other discussion, comments, concerns? You want to say something, Mr. Roby?
No, I don't.
Okay. With that said, all those in favor? Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you. Thank you, Justin.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Moving on to reports, items of appreciation. As always, council members, this is your opportunity to share what's going on in our community, share what's going on with your commissions. And as always, we will start with Councilmember Huntington.
I've got nothing tonight, sir.
Nothing tonight for Mr. Huntington. On to Mr. Schleter.
I attended the Sueur County Emergency Training that was provided to us on Wednesday, March 13th in Lee Center. Attended the Planning Commission meeting on Thursday, the 14th, which we just discussed. Also attended the Coalition of Greater Minnesota Cities Legislative Action Day up in St. Paul on Wednesday, the 20th. And I just wanted to remind everyone that the Sueur County officials meeting is taking place Wednesday, the 27th in Waterville. County Assessor Bender will be giving the presentation and taking questions.
Thank you. Moving on to Councilmember Sullivan.
I have nothing to report tonight.
Nothing from Councilmember Sullivan. Councilmember Swanberg is gone tonight. Councilmember Tui.
Yes, I, on the 12th, attended an MRVT meeting, and a few things came up. The summer fair for the city of Le Sueur will start June 1st, and that's $1 a ride, one way. The other thing is the system, or MRVT, got a couple of electric vehicles. They're coming. Unfortunately, what was it, Martin? 150-mile radius. You know what it is? Maybe 75. So, and they've got to be kept in a building that can't go below 60 degrees Fahrenheit. So this is going to be a challenge for the system. Ridership is down, particularly in Le Sueur, so they're going to cut hours in Le Sueur, and I think it was like 8:30 to 4:30. And then they're also, with Mayo closing up here, they're considering a bus run between Le Sueur and St. Peter just to Mayo. And they'll coordinate with the Mayo scheduler in St. Peter so that they don't, they're not, try to do it, okay, all the Le Sueur people come in on Tuesday, that type of thing that would use the bus. And one other note for anybody that's interested, in Lee Center tomorrow night, I think it's at from 6 to 9 for $20. You can get certified in CPR. So I'm going to do it.
Thank you.
And that is at the ambulance building in Lee Center.
Thank you. A lot of good information there. Thank you very much. Councilmember Williams.
I also went to that crisis communication event in Lee Center, talking to us about how to, as officials, how to talk to the public in the event of an emergency situation. So it was pretty interesting, kind of repetitive for me. And I just wanted to remind people that the Lions Easter egg hunt, I believe, is Saturday, so just don't forget to bring your baskets. See you there. That's all I have.
Thank you. And along that note, I want to wish everybody a happy Easter, and I hope there's a big success with the Lions Easter egg hunt. I hope the weather's good for it. And this morning I was woken up to a sound I haven't heard in a long time, and it was snow plows at 6 a.m. So I want to thank our good city workers for getting that done this morning. So with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting.
So moved.
Thank you, Councilmember Huntington, seconded by Councilmember Tree. All those in favor?
Aye.